material and familiarizing yourself with it. Ed Ruppelt was in fact an officer assigned to Project Blue Book, and not that he broke ranks, but he did publish, was at the time a remarkably forthcoming book on his involvement. What was the actual title of that book?
The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects.
And still available as a
as a used book, but it was quite a bestseller at the time, so there were many copies. This is from Luke Air Force Base. Could be a high-altitude aircraft, perhaps.
Absolutely possible. It is, again, this is in the early days of jets, and that contrail was pretty indicative of it. But again, we really don't know.
Yeah, and I don't have the files with me at hand, so I'm not sure exactly what the Air Force concluded on that one. This is from '54.
Oh, yeah.
This must be one of the grainy
ones.
That's
it. What you just saw, that was it. Again, most of our viewers here have grown up in a time of great film sophistication. We've seen special effects in films, whether or not it's been Star Wars or Jurassic Park or Forrest Gump, that really are so extraordinary that it makes you somewhat distrustful of what can be done in film. This is a more innocent time.
Well, yeah, this one now is interesting because this was during a scientific expedition in Norway for the solar eclipse. And so it was, they had fitted an airplane with various scientists, and they had all kinds of recording equipment to do their measurements, and they did catch a UFO, and this even appeared on the BBC News at the time.
It did indeed, and I think one of the important things to recall in a case like this, where you have a legitimate crew out on a scientific mission.
Yeah, they're the clips, you see.
Yeah. That these individuals made a certain choice to go public with this material, which they did not have to do. There is still, as many people know, a tremendous ridicule factor associated with coming forward and saying, I saw a UFO.
And especially in those days.
And especially
now
for professionals.
Changed,
it's softening a bit.
Right, it's softening, yeah. But in those days, it was very difficult for a scientist, a government officer, whatever, to go public. Yeah.
This enhanced footage here I find fascinating, because what we are seeing is two ellipses. They are white. They seem to be moving on the same trajectory, holding the same angle, and, well, basically pacing this conventional aircraft.
Yeah, of course, those smudges that you see, this is characteristic of motion picture footage from the old days.
Oh, and we'll see worse.
Yeah, we'll see worse. And
those are better.
Those are not UFOs or anything, but just scratches and things on the film.
Exactly.
This is a more controversial one, I guess.
And we're coming into a time now where some of this footage is supplied by people whose names we know in the field. They're part of one of the earliest aspects of UFO studies, generally referred to as the contactee movement.
Right.
Can we trace that from a certain beginning, Antonio?
Yes, I believe that the father of the contactee movement is George Adamski, in which we will see several footage supposedly taken by him. And he sort of created the tone. There might have been contactees even before Adamski, but they didn't go public. And so Adamski really sort of sets the tone in which you have friendly contact with aliens, and the alien is benign.
Yeah. And that was something that permeated quite a lot of, so to say, ufology through the 1950s and even into the early 60s. Again,
and even beyond. In fact, even today, still in Latin America, for instance, contactees are quite powerful still.
And in fact, we are going to see that footage, in a few hours
we'll
from
see
now.
Diaz and those people, yes.
Exactly.
So even today, it still continues. Though in this country, in the U.S., it's sort of the contactee thing has subsided, and it's been replaced by abductions in terms of the popular, exposure.
And where the attitude is more that this is not a pleasant experience and not one where they're benign aliens necessarily. Okay.
Here we go into the various smudgy ones, I guess.
I think this one may be the one that we were talking about before that really is technically the tiredest and most grainy piece of footage. We will be seeing...
spectacle smudges,
we see those two blips, and we'll be seeing the other... There's two others.
The two blips there,
at the bottom left right now. And what they are, we can't tell. We can get a sense there's some cloud cover in the sky that we're looking up toward.
Yeah, no points of reference, which is the one thing, and this is a good thing we bringing up now in the beginning, this is also for the people who are viewing this program, should they ever get a chance to record a UFO,
figure ground.
Always get a reference point.
Yeah, whether it's the top of a tree or a hillside, a good-shaped cloud, something
the
you
moon,
can see.
whatever, yeah.
Now here we have objects seemingly moving in and out from the sides on a strictly horizontal sort of display. Again, no points of fixed reference.
Sometimes it's difficult because if the object is in the middle of the sky and it's all the blue sky, if you want a reference point, then you're going to miss the object.
Exactly.
So I understand that sometimes this is difficult. But if you can, always look for the reference point because that's essential to make measurements and to analyze.
Ray Stanford, he went on to write at least one book that I'm aware of, possibly more.
Socorro Saucer. And he did some other books, but none on UFOs.
And I know he did an earlier monograph with his brother, Rex.
Right. They were part of the Adamski group, but they later broke with Adamski. And Stanford also wrote some books about the Fatima prophecies and some other subjects. But on UFOs, I think he did basically the Socorro Saucer, the very classic book.
In a Pentagon Pantry. Yes, nice yellow book cover.
Funny name. And he later had a project called Starlight International, remember? Yes. Project Starlight International in Texas. And he had some funding he was kind of ahead of his time to get all the most updated equipment and try to record UFOs and to even call them and record them.
This one I find quite compelling.
It's a very good footage.
We've got some figure ground in terms of cloud cover. We've got a conventional contrail of an airplane up there. And this is, it seems it's a little white dot in the sky. What's the big deal? Well, folks,
we'll see plenty of those.
This is a UFO.
And we'll keep seeing them. When we get into the 90s in New Mexico, we'll see hundreds of those little white dots.
Many similar to this.
Here we start with George Adamski.
Now,
and again, the first one is not a particularly controversial. Some of the later ones of Adamski are far more controversial.
Yeah, this fits into more the classic pattern of that moving thing in the sky. We've got some groundwork here.
We do have all kinds of reference points.
There we go. This reminds me of that Russian shot that we're going to see.
It's a pretty good film, actually, I have to admit.
Yeah.
Even though traditionally have been somewhat skeptic. I'm fascinated by Adamski as a colorful character, but
absolutely,
I have more trouble, accepting that he really did meet Venusians and things like that.
Fair enough, but again, we are in a situation here where it is the pot calling the kettle black. Who is to say what was not another person's experience? And Antonio and I, like anybody, have our own attitudes, points of view, and we're pulling back a bit in the sense of trying to be our own devil's advocates and just look at all of this with a fresh eye.
He deserves a hearing, at least, or viewing, rather.
This one impresses me tremendously. Look at this thing.
This was used to be shown by the late great Barker, who was one of the early pulp writers, really on the UFO field, and he used to